Hello everybody, guess what? Remember this video, that one there, about the engine oil rising, and we fixed it by changing the DPF complete with all the sensors. It was a second-hand unit and it cured it totally. Bingo. Well, here's the problem. Ta-ra! We now have, that was a 65 plate car, this is now a 16 plate that's doing the same thing. The engine oil level is rising. Now I checked it 2 weeks ago and it was miles over the maximum. I told the driver to go, well, I gave him an oil and filter change, set the oil on the level, told him to go away, do a few thousand miles and come back and I'll check it again just to make sure. He came back yesterday, well, the other day, November the 16th, whenever it was, and his oil level was about a good 1.5 inches over the maximum. So at that point I knew that we still had a problem with this car. So it's not just one car we've had here now, it's two. So I've looked into this one. I took this car down the road. I cleared all, there were quite a few codes, like low fuel pressure codes in the ECU. I cleared all the codes. I then took it for a good 20-mile run and I had live data on my scanner, Snap-on Solus Ultra. I was looking at the live data while I was driving it. Specifically, I was looking at the exhaust gas temperature sensors. Also, the two hego sensors that fit in this DPF, I was watching them as well and they were fluctuating. So I don't know what the limits on them are supposed to be. I've got no information. But as far as the two exhaust gas temperature sensors go, number one, which is the one nearest the engine, was reading approximately between 400 and 500 degrees Celsius, whereas number two, which sits right in the middle at the top of the DPF, that was reading a good 600 plus, about 630 it got up to, I think. To me, that says the temperature sensors are working fine. The second one should be the hottest one, especially when it's doing a regen. So anyway, I'm kind of thinking I'm not going to change the temperature sensors, but when I got back here, I then looked at the codes in the ECU and there was a code that got flung up. In that 20-mile run, it was, I'm going to get it out. I'm going to show you what it is. I'm going to read it to you because this is quite interesting. Nitrous oxide, NOx number one. Number one, I would guess, is the top hego sensor on top of the DPF, because there's two of them. There's one at the back after the filter and one before the filter. Trap efficiency below threshold. This is P2000, and I think some people have actually messaged me about P2000 codes. Now, a nitrous oxide sensor to me would have a little ECU bolted to it, especially like on BMWs and stuff. So I weren't sure about this because I've not had much to do with the NOx sensors in these, NOx sensors should I say. They are called nitrous oxide sensors. But anyway, so I decided to replace number one nitrous oxide sensor. I also got number two as well, because funnily enough, for some reason I had the number two nitrous oxide sensor here in our parts department. So if I replace both of these NOx sensors, and I'm going to give it a try. But let me just show you the scanner, because when you go into special functions, you have to reset them. Have a look. So actually, before I go into the car, there's our number one NOx sensor, which when Ford sell these, they call them hego sensors. So that's the number one, which that is the part number for it. And the number two, which is after the DPF filter, it's got a different coloured sleeving. It's got a grey sleeving, with the top one has got a blue sleeving. And number two, that is the part number for it. Anyway, so there you are. There's our number one sensor, which I fitted. The number two is down the back, so I can't show you that, but you kind of get the feeling. When I come in here, I have the scanner loaded up, special functions, ignition on. If I press yes under special functions, la la la, and I work my way down the list. Here we go. It says reset the front nitrous oxide NOx sensor learn values, which is that one there. And it also says reset the rear nitrous oxide NOx sensor learn values. So I've just fitted new sensors, so let's do this. And the very fact that after a 20-mile drive, this vehicle had flung up a number 1 NOx sensor basically outside its limits, below threshold, that says to me there's something wrong with that NOx sensor. So carry out this procedure if a new front nitrous oxide sensor has been installed. Continue. Switch ignition to the on, which it's on. Now it's doing its reset. Switch ignition off. Ignition off. Continue. Please wait. Procedure complete. So now I'm going to reset the rear one. Ignition on. Continue. It does its little count. When it does to about 4 seconds, that's about it. Ignition off. Continue. Procedure complete. There we go. And there's nothing else to reset. So now I can come out of this. There is one thing I failed to mention at the beginning of this video. Before I even done anything to this car, apart from replace the fuel filter, I connected the scanner up and there were a number of codes in the ECU. Most of them were low fuel pressure, which was due to replacing the fuel filter. But there was one code which I've seen quite a lot, it's a common one, it was engine oil deteriorated. Normally, engine oil deteriorated goes hand in hand with oil change required, which bings up on your instrument pack to let you know a service is due. So I tried to clear that engine oil deteriorated and it would clear, but the moment I start the engine up again, the code would be straight back. And the only way I could get rid of engine oil deteriorated out of the ECU was to do an oil change required reset using the buttons on your steering wheel. After I've like reset the service light basically, once I'd done that, engine oil deteriorated, cleared out the ECU and did not come back. So I had a clean ECU, no codes whatsoever. I then took it for a run down the road, 20 miles, came back and it had that NOx, nitrogen oxide sensor code below threshold, which was like, that's good news actually, because that pointed me to that number 1 hego sensor on the DPF. So now I've fitted both them sensors. I've done a reset of the scanner. What I'll do now, I'm going to give it another 20-mile run and check all the live data, see everything's working okay. If everything's fine and no codes come back, I'll then give the car back to the driver for a good 2 weeks, I should think. Let him do a few thousand miles and then I'll check the oil level, and at that point I will know if it's cured or not. I will be in touch. It's the waiting game, you see. So see you on the other side. Okay everyone, this particular car here, YMY, which is the car I have on my piece of paper I made a note of, I changed the oil filter, gave it a run, he came back, it was over full again with oil. We've replaced the whatever you want to call them, hego sensors, nitrous oxygen sensors. He's done well over 1,000 miles now since I last replaced the oil and replaced them sensors. So now he's come back for a headlight out and basically a pair of wiper blades, but I thought this is a good opportunity to check the oil. So I'll give it a little bit of a wipe. The car's been sat for like a couple of minutes now while I've been changing the headlight bulb. You know, that's all it takes to change a headlight bulb, about 2 minutes now. Probably because half the clips are missing that hold the bumper on. But anyway, it's a little bit dark at the moment, so let's see. Put that in, pull it out, try and get round to the light. Is my phone going to focus? Look at that. Let me take this into more of a light, a lit up area. Look at that. That is absolutely bang on where it should be. You see the little line on the dipstick, but there, there's the maximum mark, and that hasn't risen. I've just brought it over here so I can get a better look. Every time I put the dipstick down, it kind of rolls into the position where I can't see it, but you can see the line, the maximum line on the dipstick to show where the oil level is, and that is bang on the maximum where it should be. So that's excellent. That's another car fixed. So, did you also notice the colour of the oil on that dipstick? It was pretty clean. That's because I recently replaced it. The thing is, when you get diesel oil mixing with your engine oil, apart from the obvious that it's rising, it gets black very quickly. I guess I was lucky in this case, for the simple fact I had that P2000 code flag up in the engine ECU. In the previous car, which I've linked to earlier on in this video, there was no P2000 code. So it was a little bit more tricky as to what the hell to go for. But in this case, that P2000 code, well, it led me straight to the actual component that was faulty, that was causing the problem all along. I will say, however, throughout all the years I have been messing around with these Mondeos, I have seen that code P2000, nitrous oxide sensor below threshold, whatever it is, many times, but it's been one of those codes that would be in conjunction with many other codes. You'd normally clear all the codes, run the car again and see what comes back, which would normally be a low fuel pressure code, because it would probably be an injector problem on one of these cars, if anything. And the P2000 code, you wouldn't bloody see again. So I've always disregarded it as nothing. I've never had that code or related that code to anything that's been causing a problem until now. Now I know if I see P2000 again, it could well be, I will be very suspicious about the oil level rising. Because let's face it, them nitrous oxide sensors, or hego sensors as Ford call them, they adjust or tell the ECU how the engine's running, rich or lean, constantly, in real time. So that then the ECU obviously adjusts the injectors to fire at the right time and all the rest of it. So they're quite important, and if they're not working properly as they should do, this is the kind of consequences you get. DPF regenning when it shouldn't be, things like that. I believe it's the DPF, the engine is firing on its exhaust stroke or trying to regen or whatever at the same time, and fuel is going down the side of the cylinders into the sump. It's a little bit complicated. I mean, I can't even get my head around it myself. It's a bit beyond me, but you know, it is what it is. I'm glad I fixed it. That's the second oil level rising problem we've now fixed, which have been two different problems, but I can't actually say the first problem was a definite. I mean, the first car could well have been the same sensors. I'll never know, because I replaced the whole DPF with all 4 sensors on it, 2 temperature probes and 2 hego sensors. But anyway, I'm glad it's done. It's all over. That's it. End of video. One other thing. Guess what I'm doing now? No prizes for guessing. Can you see what's missing out the top of this cylinder head? The flipping camshafts and timing chain. This particular car, it came in because it lost power, and it's literally in forced limited power at the moment because the DPF, the diesel particulate filter, is full of soot and it needs to be regenerated. A static regen needs to be done in it. There is a turbo hose down here that had a split in it, and that's the cause of it all. It's lost its boost pressure, and obviously it has sooted up the DPF, and the driver's been driving the car around until the DPF got to a point where it's got so much soot in it that it's put it into force limited power. So the driver's come in and said, I've got lack of power. Well, obviously I've actually put another second-hand boost hose on. I've run it up again, and then I've noticed that the timing chain was noisy. So I took the filler cap off and got my little pick in there, and then, yep, the chain is flapping around. So great. There's no way on this earth that I'm going to do a static regeneration with a bloody slapping timing chain, because God only knows what could happen. There's no real dramas with this car. I have the new tensioner, I have the new chain on, ready to go back on. The only thing that isn't too clever about this is the actual old tensioner. Obviously this is the top guide goes here, which is completely gone, and the bottom piece, there's a little piston in there and a spring. That won't come out, it's stuck in there. So the spring is obviously all broken up to pieces. The little piston in there is stuck, but there should also be a guide at the bottom here, a metal piece and a plastic bit that's completely gone. Now normally, under the normal run of things, you would normally fish out any broken pieces just in here, but there's nothing. It's all completely gone. So it's all fallen down the oil return hole into the sump. It's a good thing the oil pump pickups have a nice fine gauze on them, so all that shit don't get picked up. So the only way I'm really going to get them bits out is to take the sump off. But hey ho, it's not too much of a problem to do that. So anyway, that's what I'm doing to finish the day off with. So what can I say? Happy days. Or should I say, another day in paradise. Not. Anyway, that's the video over. Thanks for watching, everybody. I guess I'll see you all in the next one. See ya.